is going to be up here showing us how to lace a wheel. It's going to be mesmerizing. You're going to watch it and you say, oh, I can do that. You're going to go home and do it. You're going to run, like Chris Callan said, 3 rims, and you're going to cuss a lot, and then you're just going to send it out to have it done. But before that, before we have Matt Carroll come up, we've got a special treat who's local. He's leaving me right now. I don't know where he's going. He said, Keith, you know, we're doing our thing. Oh, he didn't have all of his parts and pieces. There we go. So we've got Mr. Keith Ball. Oh, yeah. And, you know, the Progressive International Motorcycle Show has a lot of different facets of motorcycle culture involved in it. You know, we've got a lot of kind of racer-oriented stuff, vintage stuff, OEM stuff. There's a lot of just diverse motorcycle cultures coming together. In the culture that I come out of, the American V-twin culture, Keith Ball is a legend, and he's nothing short of that. And he has given more to, perhaps, we've got one right here. He's given more to the motorcycle community in the V-twin world than what anybody can imagine. He was one of the founders and a huge push, writer, editor, salesman for Easy Rider magazine, which was kind of the original motorcycle magazine for American V-twin culture. Land speed record holder. He's been racing at Bonneville and El Mirage, 3 land speed records. And you're going for another. You're building a belly tank right now. So he's insane as well. But on top of all of that, he also has always kind of been into art and creating welded art and that kind of stuff. So Keith, welcome to Grease and Gears Garage. Again, thank you so much for all you've given us. Yeah. Tell me what you're about doing and where you're going with this particular piece of art.
Well, this is sort of a bucket list project. You know, I'm going to turn 70 next year. I thought I want to try something that I've always wanted to get into. You know, and this ultimately will be a bronze sculpture. The notion is that this is the skeleton. And what we're going to have to do here in the near future is start to put clay over the skeleton. Once the clay is put on it and it's sculpted, then we'll have to actually cut it apart in certain places to have it cast in plaster and then ultimately in bronze. Then we're going to have to take those pieces and put them back together. Now the notion for doing this is, you know, you got to have a reason for doing it. Is that I'm a member of the Hamsters, and the Hamsters do a charity auction every year. And so I'm going to do a hamster riding this in a rolly-free fashion. I don't know if you guys are familiar with rolly-free. He's that famous guy who rode a Vincent on the Bonneville Salt Flats wearing just his boxer shorts, and he was laid out on it. And this photograph has been in every book that's ever been printed.
Trying to get as aerodynamic as he could. He wanted to be as flat as he could, reduce all the resistance, took all his clothes off and laid flat on a bike on salt and went really fast.
So we're doing that with a hamster.
And explain, kind of share what the Hamsters are about, too. A lot of folks don't know the Hamsters.
The Hamsters are a motorcycle club that was started 40 years ago now. Yeah, 40 years ago. And it was started by a bunch of builders. Arlen Ness was one of them. Arlen Fatland, Dave Perowitz. So these guys got together and actually what they all got drunk one night, and the next morning they got up, and Susan Perowitz had drawn little hamsters on paper plates and put them on the doors of their motel room in Daytona. And when they got up, they were hamsters. So it's been going all these years, and for a long time it was just builders, and now it's builders and guys who work for them and
guys that own custom motorcycles.
Yeah, and it's about 300 guys now, all over the country and all over the world. So anyway, I'm going to do this and try to get it to Sturgis next year in August, get it put up on the stage and have them auction it off and to raise funds. And what they do is they do this auction for the Rapid City Children's Hospital in Rapid City, South Dakota. And so it should be, I hope this will draw some funds for this auction. if I get it done.
Well, Keith, this looks like a pretty ambitious project, honestly. You've now this photo down here. We got. Is this a? What is this based on? Is this based off the 1916 Excelsior?
Yes. Yes, it's based off a 1916 Excelsior Henderson board track racer.
All
and
right.
It's actually one of my favorite board track races I've ever seen in my life. And if you could see it up here, it's just a great looking bike. I mean, just wonderful lines. And so that's what I tried to model it after.
Okay.
Sort of artistic scrap to create this creation. And currently my girder even works a little.
Look at that. I know he's showing that to Kiwi Mike from Kiwi, India, and that's pretty impressive. Now, who do you have helping you do the bronze and the casting and stuff? Has somebody partnered with you on this?
Well, actually, I've talked to a lot of people, and I met a woman who teaches sculpting in Long Beach. But then recently I met somebody who works for Disney in the Imagineering department, and he was very helpful. Right. And actually another hamster is going to give me a hand. Tony Splanini is a young hamster, and he's into this too. So
all right.
So the challenge is going to be clay. For instance, I have to make a tube of clay and wrap it around this rim, and that'll be the tire. But then all this has to be molded in. There will never be any spokes in it because they're just too thin to cast. But then we'll have to just go through every aspect of it and sculpt it and cover it with clay. And
that seems like an extraordinary amount of work, and I'm glad that you're doing it and somebody else is helping you with it. But man, that is going to be absolutely fabulous. And Keith, what I love about this is that you don't have to do anything else. You've got BikerNet, your internet magazine that you do. You do that for Cycle Source magazine as well. You do all the news for them and in the back of that issue. And you've accomplished everything in the motorcycle world that anybody could dream of accomplishing. But what I love about Keith Ball is he really does. You embody the spirit of the motorcycle community, because at the end of the day, we give back. Yeah. And you just continue to give to the motorcycle community, and through that community, being able to give to the Rapid City Children's Hospital is just beautiful. So thank you so much for doing that.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Pat.
So, ladies and gentlemen, Keith Ball.
Thank you.
And we sure do appreciate you having it, and he's one of your good local boys. So thank you, Keith. Appreciate you being here with us. All right, we're gonna have Mark, or as I like to call him, Gimli, is going to help Matt Carroll get his wheel up here, where we're going to do some wire wheels. So I'm sure Mark someplace, or there's Chris. Chris will help. What, did Mark to go on vacation? So Matt Carroll, come on up. We'll talk a little bit while they're getting some of your stuff up here. We'll talk a little bit about what your shop does. Now, we were funning, and I'm sure that's why you named it that. Old Nipple Twister. Where did you come up with that name? Well, explain it, because otherwise they're going to just think it's dirty.
Right. So there's a few parts that make up a wheel. You've got your rim. Some people call it a band. The hub, the center of the wheel. Spokes, the wires that you see. And then the nipple. The nipple's basically a nut that goes onto the spoke. That's what you're turning to true the wheel. You're tightening it. You're pulling that rim all around the hub. The hub stays stationary, and you're wanting to move the rim till you get rid of all the run out, any kind of play that's in it, the side to side, your lateral, or your up and down, your radial. And
all right. So it's just a kind of a play on a word, Old Nipple Twister Wheelsmith. Now, how long have you been doing wheels?
I've been doing wheels pretty steady here for the last 5 or so years. It's kind of a dying art. It's something that I learned. I was a school teacher in North Carolina and went back to night school for motorcycle mechanics and ended up learning how to lace and true wheels.
All right.
Kind of an old school guy that taught us there. And so I did that night school for about 2.5 years, and just only for my bikes and friends' bikes, just something as a hobby, kept teaching. And when I ended up on the West Coast, happened to live near a company that manufactures spokes. So I had a business background. I ended up going back to school for business, I've got an MBA in business management, and I had that side of things, and then the motorcycle side of things. So it's a good fit.
Yeah.
For the past few years, I've been working only independently. Most of the work's done in a little shop there at my house, so it makes it nice for me. And
all right. And so do you get guys sending you wheels from all over the place? I mean,
yeah, a lot of it's mail in. I've got a lot of good local guys. Some of my local shops will use me, but a lot of them are sending rare wheels from all over the country. Even a couple international guys will send me stuff, mainly for antique wheels and show bike wheels.
All right.
But I've done it all. Bikes, land speed racing bikes, antique restorations, the show bikes, the cafe racers, you name it. I've built wheels for it.
Well, and that's, boy, you put yourself out there with those kind of guys, land speed record guys. You're putting somebody's life on the line with wheels, so you got to make sure that stuff's right. And also with then the vintage bikes, because those guys are picky. They'll kill you quicker than a land speed record guy will. So
you got that right.
Just knowing Kiwi Mike, he's a tough bird to cross with that. So, well, it looks like we're getting close. When he gets that clamped down, we can just start going. What do we need to do to set up to start getting a wheel laced here?
All right, so the first thing I wanted to show were just some of the parts that go into the wheel build. And the wheel that I'm actually going to be building is a 1942 Harley WR wheels. The rear wheel, got a guy, Travis Watkins, good customer and good guy, building a bike for him to race flat track with, or building a wheel for his bike that he's building. And that one I'll just be using a Harley Star hub for it. It's all original parts. He's even got an old Kelsey Hayes rim that I had powder coated, redone for him. Same thing with the hub. Stripped the hub down, powder coated the hub, rebuilt the Star hub with the roller bearings in it, put new fresh parts in it. And that's what I'll actually be building. And these are the spokes. These are American-made spokes. These are stainless steel spokes that I've actually media blasted. Took the stainless steel ones. They're made from actual metal that's coming here from the stateside, so you know what you've got. There's no mystery metal in it. And the media blasted, it kind of gives it like a cadmium look without actually paying those high prices on plating. So
that's a little trick. That's always a good trick to know.
And this is actually the hub. So here we've got the Star hub. Call it a Star hub because of this cover. It's carrying all your bearings inside there. And that's the Star hub. With the Star hub, all the spokes are the same. So you've got 40 spokes that are all the same length, same throat length, same angle of bend. The way that differs, here's another style of Harley hub, and this is off of a Narrow-Glide. This would be a front wheel, and on those you've got two different spokes. So you've got one with a short throat there. That would be considered your inner spokes. On this hub, all the spokes feed in, so they're really all inners, but one has a slightly longer throat to it, and what that does, it allows it to clear as it's crossing, it allows it to drop down lower below that other spoke and gives it some clearance so the spokes aren't binding. So there's two different types of spokes that would go in a hub like this. The Star hub, all the same spokes.
Okay.
This is an early hub. So this is a 1942 hub. This is a late model hub. This could be on up to 2017, 2018 Harley hub. The interesting thing is the length would be the same if you were putting it to the same
either one
rim.
of the same, yeah.
These spokes would work in either one. Now, the only difference is a slight difference is the thickness and the flange there of that aluminum hub. And what that does, it creates a kind of a bend in the angle. So what I like to do, these are all made for this particular Star hub. It's got a thinner wall on that steel hub, so the throat's not quite as long. There's a little difference in the degree of bend. It's just a better fit. Most companies sell them as if they would work with either one, and they will work with either one, but you get just a better fitment when you put that steel with a shorter throat on it. So that's pretty much what makes up the spokes there. I'll show you a nipple. In case you've never seen a nipple before.
I've never seen a nipple. Yeah, we got a question. I can't hear you. I'm sorry. Are the nipple and do they have the same number of threads? The nipple and the shaft have the same number of threads?
The threads are made the same. These particular spokes have a rolled thread, so it's a little bit more strength to get a better engagement on it. A lot of your metric spokes are cut threads. Things coming from overseas have the cut threads. They're a little bit smaller. You don't get the same strength with the two. Now, as you're truing, you might the threads of the spoke might start protruding through that nipple, depending on how long they are. A lot of the factories will create their spokes just a little bit short. If you started looking at new bikes, you'll see some threads sticking out above the nipple, and that's what it is. They don't want to have to go back and trim those spokes. So they err on the side of them being a little short rather than
But cosmetically, aesthetically, it's not quite as nice.
It's not quite as nice, and you're losing some of that engagement. A lot of the wheels I build will actually protrude just a little bit, and I'll have to go back and trim those down, just grinding those down so that it's not going to poke through the tube. That's kind of the idea there. What you see up here also are two different types of ways to true. This would be a vertical stand. This is probably the most common thing that you see. A lot of your home builders will use one of these. They're inexpensive to buy this stand, relatively inexpensive. And you can true a wheel on it, no problem. You mount it up here in between. This is another way, horizontally. I prefer to use this. Some wheels it's a little easier just for mounting purposes to stick it on the vertical stand. The horizontal stand that I'm using here is just a vise. I've got an axle. It's actually a Harley axle, and then some spacers here. And what that does, it allows the wheel to sit with a more even distribution of weight. Everything sets out even, and it's also an easier way. Some wheels require a special offset measurement where you're moving the rim away from the hub, one side or the other, maybe for chain clearance, maybe for brake clearance. But you want to go one side or the other. If you're doing it horizontally, it's a little bit easier to measure. I can put a straight edge on top and find out where my measurement is.
Now, how'd the boy from North Carolina end up in California?
That pretty little lady right there.
She drug you out, huh?
She's from Southern California. She came out there for a while and started getting homesick. I said, well, I'll try out the West Coast. We've been out here to visit. It's kind of hard to beat riding every day of the year.
Oh, yeah, man.
Average temperature is 70 degrees in Southern California, so I've loved it and stayed here ever since. Been here a little over 5 years.
What part of North Carolina?
Right in the center of the state. I would call it a one-horse town, but my horse died. Mr. Ed died about 6 years ago, right before I moved, and so now there's no horses in that town. We did have a stoplight for a time. They took that out and gave us a roundabout.
Oh,
name
nice.
of it's Bowie's Creek. The only thing there is Campbell University.
I know right where it's at.
Home of the Fighting Camels. So go
There
Camels.
you go. Yep. I went to Methodist.
Okay.
In Fayetteville. I grew up in
all
eastern
right.
North Carolina, so I know
Okay.
right where you're at. My dad was a Methodist preacher, so we moved every time the light bill came due. And but I recognized that accent. And man, we lived up near Ahoskie, and I went to 3 high schools. I was Wilson Fike. I went to North Duplin. I went to Northampton County High School East. And, man, I was all over
Well,
there.
we're right in the same neck of the woods.
Yeah, man, we were right there, eastern North Carolina boys.
Now, he mentioned Methodist. Campbell University is Baptist.
That's right. I went to Methodist University, and Campbell University is Baptist. We used to go over there, and at Campbell University, true story, you go over there to see a girl and visit. You had to sit on the couch. There had to be 12 inches between you, and you had to have both feet on the floor. And that was the rule over there, so. Needless to say, I didn't date many girls from Campbell University.
All right, so I'll go ahead and get started on building this wheel. This particular bike has a right side drive. So one of the things that I like to do when I know what side of the hub's the drive side, and I like to make my outer spokes follow that, become the pull spokes on the drive. And this type of little thing is something you've got to hear, you've got to learn from somebody. That kind of knowledge has got to be passed down. Everybody's got a buddy that can build wheels, that build a bicycle wheel or used to build their dirt bike wheels. But when you've got somebody out on the highway doing 80 miles an hour on this freeway out here, you want to make sure things are right. You want to make sure that they're tip-top and done correctly. And this is one of those little things that'll help with that. So I know my right side drive is going to be over here, so I'm going to want my pull spoke basically to be like this. So it's pulling instead of pushing that spoke. Whenever that torque, whenever he lays on the throttle, I want him to have that little bit of extra strength in the wheel build.
Now, what you're going to witness here is you're going to witness this guy do this wheel, and then you're going to go do your own, and you're going to cuss him every step of the way. Because this never fails. It looks so easy until I go to do it.
And something I do a little different here than when I'm building a wheel, if you look at the Harley manuals, you're looking at the service manuals, they typically all show putting one spoke at a time. You're building a wheel like that. You've got the rim up here. Things get just too much to manage, too much to handle. Once you know a few little tricks, a few little rules to wheel building, you can put them all in at the same time, then lay your rim down over it. Also saves you from scratching up that nice new powder coat job on it. And what I'm doing, I'm putting all these in. You can see there's two rows here, a row of outers and a row of inners. So they're going to cross over each other. This particular hub's a little different in that they're all feeding from the outside or from the inside out. Other types of hubs out there might have inners and outers where you've got a different bend in it where it's actually going to wrap over the flange itself. But this is Harley's design and seems to be pretty tried and true. All right, so we've got them all put in on that side, the drive side there.
Mark, you getting all this? Photogenic memory. I don't even think that's a thing. It is now because you said it. Now we just have to define it.
All right, so now these are the inners. So they're going to be going in the opposite direction, so I'm flipping those over. I guess one thing to mention here, hubs have an indexing and rims have an indexing. And a lot of wheels, you've got a 50-50 chance of building that wheel right if you don't know what the indexing is or what that means. And essentially, you'll have every other spoke coming out long or short if the indexing doesn't match. The indexing I'm looking at right now is the relationship of one side to the other, where the holes are. So this particular inner hole, looking down to this inner hole, is to the right. We call that standard indexing. I'm sorry, to the right, that's non-standard. That's going to be your European indexing, a lot of people say. The rim indexing comes in based on how those holes are punched out. This rim has got holes in it, 40 holes in it. Most of your Harley wheels are 40. A lot of your metric bikes you'll see 36. Little spool chopper wheels you'll see 36 or 40. Those two numbers seem to work out well, give the wheel a lot of strength. This particular rim is punched in a certain pattern. And you can see it based on where the valve stem is. A lot of people who are punching the rim or drilling the rim out use the valves, where they're going to put the valve hole as a guide for that. But the way these are, the direction they're forced in, they're going to force that nipple in a specific direction and at an angle. So depending on what type of hub you have, if you had a really wide hub, you would want a rim that's got wide angles on it. It's going to force that nipple in the correct direction for the width of the hub. You got a narrow hub, you want less angle to it. So you've got a little bit of side angle going, and then kind of going front to back here, you got another angle. So that hole is in a specific place on the dimple of the rim based on the hub that's being used. If you use a hub that's not meant for that rim, you'll see some bowing on the spokes and run into some complications. Little slight bowing doesn't hurt much once you get a good torque down, but it just might look ugly. You get too severe of a bowing and it starts weakening the spokes. The two weakest points on a spoke, right here at the bend and then right at the thread. That's where you typically see them break when they do. So I'm looking at this rim and I see that this rim is got two coming at me, one going away to the right. This is going to be a European index rim as well, non-standard. Because of that, most Harley wheels, you would build them with the spokes going in opposite directions. Inner spokes on this side would be in the opposite of this side. But because they're the same, we're going to put them in the same direction. Match those indexing patterns up. I built this hub up today, put in new bearings, got the roller bearings in there, put in some new gaskets and new fitments, so it'll be nice and strong and ready to rock and roll for this particular customer. We've got the Parkerized star cover on there, Parkerized screws holding that cover down, and then kind of a semi-gloss powder coating on this. We didn't want to get it too shiny, too glossy, to show imperfections. We didn't want to get too far away from what it historically would have looked like, so we went with kind of a satin finish on that powder coating. It looks pretty good.
Okay, so you're just laying these in the same way you did on the other side.
That's right. You'll see this inner and this inner are going in the same direction.
Right.
And that's because this inner here goes to the right, and then my indexing on my rim, I'm looking at it.
Comes at you, and the other one goes, okay.
So we've got this matching up the indexing there.
I'm going to be able to do this one day. I swear I'll be able to do it. Well, boy, man, I get so frustrated. It's just at this point, it starts looking complicated to me when I'm doing it.
Just a big metal bird's nest, and
Yep.
it can be complicated, and every wheel could be different types of hubs. There are some general rules and guidelines you can kind of go by and put together about any kind of wheel. If you know what the cross pattern is, you know what the indexing is. A lot of this is organic. It's just, especially the truing process, to me it's just an organic thing. You've got specs you can measure on. You can put a dial indicator on there. You can put a sight needle on there. But all these parts have imperfections in them. So a lot of it just has to do with the amount of time you've done, how many times you've done a wheel, what you're kind of looking out for, especially these old wheels. You're not going to get the thing perfect. Ideal is to get zero run out. If you're a few thousandths off of that, it's not too big of a deal. Some of this older stuff, it's not really meant to be put out on the freeway. It might be for a dirt track, it might be for a racetrack. Just depends on what you've got. You've always got to work with the materials you've got. Some of those older metals are a little weaker, so you're not going to put as much force on them. So this is where we are now. We've got everything laced up in the hub where we want it. Next step's going to be to lube up the threads. Anytime you're working with nipples, you want to make sure you lube up everything real good.
Keep your mouth shut, Mark. That's not time for you to comment.
And what I'm putting on here is just a heavy drawing oil. This is particularly helpful with the stainless steel. I've got a stainless steel spoke, stainless steel nipple. A lot of people worry about the binding or any kind of interaction between those similar metals, but this lube here prevents any of that from happening. And it also gives me more of a true feel when I'm truing the wheel of what kind of torque value I've got on it. How tight have I got those nipples going on the threads. This gives a more honest tension between the thread engagement. There's 40 here, so we're going to have to do this 40 times.
I bet you were a good teacher.
You better believe it.
What did you teach?
Taught English as a second language for about 7 years. Went back to school, and after I got the master's, ended up at a community college out there teaching just various business courses.
All right.
Maybe I'm running my mouth a little too much.
Ah, you're good, man. That's good.
Got a captive audience here.
I taught some summer school classes, theology and archaeology and stuff. When I
Okay.
it turned out I don't like college students.
Yeah.
They bothered me. Yeah, none of them wanted to be there. You know, they were just there for punch the clock. You know.
Well, the good thing about college students, they're paying. Somebody's paying for it.
Somebody's paying for it. Yeah.
Feel a little less bad if they don't put in the work. And
You taught high school?
taught middle school, and then ended up teaching college.
God bless you. I think college. Well, I don't know. Middle school and college kind of the same.
A lot of fun at the middle school with too much energy.
Oh yeah.
All right, so we've got all these threads lubed up pretty good. And now what I like to do is just set the rim over it. And I'll use some little spacers. Part of this is to protect the rim, and whether it's plating or painting on the rim. And part of it's just to get that rim raised up to kind of where it's going to be in the wheel. It makes it a little easier to go together once you do that. Where'd I put that rim? And I'm based out of Azusa, California. And it's been nice being in Southern California just because a lot of the industry's here. Got a lot of bike builders here. The area I'm in, within a 5-mile radius, I've got several local shops there, several bike builders. Chabot Engineering, Shinya Kimura's over there. Area Cycles, he does a lot of fabrication and welding.
Now, are there a lot of guys that are doing this kind of wheel lacing, though? And there's not, though.
Not many people do it, mainly because it's so time-consuming. A lot of guys can figure it out easy enough, but it's just a matter of consuming that time up. And then if you're dealing with polished parts or powder-coated parts going on a show bike, you don't want to risk scratching those parts up.
That's it for me. I mean, I know I can figure it out, but it's just not worth the time. It takes me so long. You know, it's just worth paying somebody, knowing it's going to be right.
That's my buddy Tony at T&T Cycles. He'll pass along a lot of wheel work to me just for that. It just takes so much time, and he knows he's going to get it done right. But he's in there manufacturing custom hubs, and
yeah, I don't
passes them along to.
I don't build motors anymore either, though, because I mean, it just, you know, there's other people that do that. They're set up to do it. They can do it better and quicker, and I can move on to something else. But
one of those things that might be fun to try it out one time and learn, just to show yourself you can do it. But when you're really doing it on something that you're going to put out there, put out on the road, you want to make sure it's right. You want to make sure it's torqued up correctly. That's a big thing. A lot of the problems I see with wheels, they just don't have the correct amount of torque on it. Somebody tightens it up and they're not sure how far to go. I'll typically use a torque wrench when I'm done. I've got a special made one with kind of a crow's foot on it. I can put it on that nipple body, right on the flats of the nipple, see exactly what I've got, what kind of inch-pounds I've got on the wheel.
Nice.
I know certain wheels are going to take more than others. Your late model Harley wheel, you're going to want a 70 to 80 inch-pound of torque on each nipple. Hold that wheel strong. Some of these older ones, you don't have quite as much need for it. Those bikes aren't putting out the same amount of power. A lot of times the weight of the bike has something to do with that, where you want to go. And then I mentioned before the offset of a rim. If you're truing it up and you want to pull that rim to one side, once you start doing that, one side of the spokes is really tight and the other, you start losing tension because you've got to move the rim over. All right, we've got the first half done. A lot of wheel building and wheel truing to make things easier on yourself is keeping things kind of loose and working your way up at an even distribution of tension. Right now I'm really keeping this wheel really loose. A common mistake people have is to go ahead and run that nipple up on it. Just let it relax for a while and you can move that rim around. It's a little easier to move. It kind of pulls itself where it needs to be.
So you wouldn't suggest getting a cordless drill at this point with a bit and just running it down on it?
Not running it down. A lot of times when I'm there in the shop and I've got a line of them in front of me, I will use a drill to get where I want to be on it.
Close.
After it's already built. Once I get all the nipples on, I'll run it up snug or run it up to a certain point on the threads that I know is going to make it a lot faster on me once I start truing. This is where I was mentioning, if you did one spoke at a time, it's going to be much more time consuming than this. And you see here, I've got the rim up out of the way, out of the spokes, and it just kind of pieces itself together after that. I've seen all kinds of instructions on wheel building and people that number each hole. They'll write a number beside each hole or color coordinate. I'm not sure what all that's about, but
people trying to develop systems to make it easier to teach people. Boy, I tell you, it's really
trying to reinvent the wheel, not a good idea.
Not always, is it? Now, you guys going to go lace your own wheels? Do you lace your own wheels? Oh, you tried it once? Oh, they screwed it up more at the motorcycle shop. The bicycle shop. Yeah, guys at bicycle shops, they're more used to spokes than motorcycle shops. But I've only ran into one person when, you know, I'm in Iowa now, but I was in Georgia. A guy, Jerry Hall at Jerry's Cyclecraft, actually for several magazines wrote articles about lacing and truing wheels. And but he's old school. I mean, that guy, he's been in business for 45 years. And I think half the people in Atlanta still take him wheels to do. But
well, that's the fun part about it. Not many people do it, so I see everybody's wheel. Everybody in the industry's got something they need done at some point. Even guys that can build wheels, they end up with a custom wheel. They want to do something one-off or make a hub, and I can come up with the custom spokes they need, whatever the correct length is, the correct bend angle. I can come up with that for them and help them get their wheels together.
That's great.
So it's really an honor. You know, you get to work on a small piece of an amazing bike. Somebody's putting in the skill, their skills, they're putting in their time, their money, and then you get to.
Well, what an honor that, I mean, that you get to, I mean, they value what you do, and that, I mean, that's amazing, because I mean, this is a dying art, you know. I mean, obviously there aren't a lot of folks that invest the time to learn how to do this.
And this is where I would sometimes use a drill to do this. Basically what I'm doing is just running these threads up just enough to get things kind of snug where I want them. Keep my dirty paws off the nipples right now where that grease is exposed. And kind of keeps it a little cleaner here.
Yeah, see, as soon as you talked about grease, I mean, I'd have it all over my pants. I'd have it on my face. I'd be dirty already. That thing would be scratched up.
We'll kind of turn it. You can see just how loose it is in that wheel right now, and inside that rim.
Heather, there's going to be a quiz later. You better pay attention. Chris might have you start doing this at Flat Broke. Now, Renee got us in touch with you, didn't he?
That's right. I met Roy and Renee several years ago, probably at the swap meet. I see him out there all the time. If it has motorcycles involved in it, he's doing it.
Yeah.
And I actually traded a little wheel work for a helmet. So
nice.
I got me a vintage helmet and from Roy, and Renee had lined that thing up for me real nice. And best wearing helmet I've ever. I'm one of these guys. I don't have a lot of helmets. I'll keep a full face and a small helmet. And he's got me hooked up with a little 3/4 helmet.
Yeah, man.
Really enjoyed it. I moved out here and I had a helmet that I'd had since I was 18. My bike got stolen. It was locked up in the box on the bike, so they got I believe I was more sorry about the helmet getting taken than the bike itself.
You guys just joining us on Facebook Live, and here in our audience we got Matt Carroll, and he is showing us how to lace a wheel.
And
this one's going to be on a racer, huh?
Yeah, this is a 42 WR. Guys are going to race this on flat track. Shout out to Travis Watkins out there. He's had me do several of his. A lot of these guys come up with a lot of rare parts. It's pretty neat to see stuff that would have otherwise just been lost
right on.
In the history of time, and they dig them out. They hunt them down. They find them. I've got a front wheel he's doing. It's a 20-inch, which is pretty rare piece. A lot of wheels you see a 19 or 21, but some of the old bikes have the 20 on there. And I asked him, I said, "You know where you can get a tire?" He thought he felt pretty certain he could hunt one down. He's having me do two on the front, so one he can have that special tire on there, that 20-inch tire, and then the other's going to be the 19.
It is amazing, those guys that are into vintage stuff, how they can find stuff, man. They know everything about it too, man.
That's it.
They'll look in a barn and they'll be like, "I want that." It really is. It's cool.
Once had someone tell me, I believe it was Tyler over at Lowbrow, was telling me, I think he mentioned Bill from Biltwell, was a spoke sniffer. I've never heard of a spoke sniffer. He said, you know, the guy he's going to be down there, when he sees a bike, he wants to check out every little part of that bike. He's down there sniffing the spokes out. So we've got everything pretty much even out here, and it's still really loose, so I'm going to kind of tighten it up with my hands here. Did have a piece of cardboard.
Oh,
we'll be real easy on it. I'll use this rag here. Don't want to.
Well, oh, here it is.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Keep that shop rag clean now. So here I'm going to just find a point where I want to start. I'll use the valve hole as my guide and just kind of go with my hand, and I can kind of feel it. I'll tighten each one just about the same amount as I go, keeping things as even as possible. It's going to make my job easier once I start truing on this wheel. This particular rim would be considered a WM3. This is 2.15 inches in between the two beads. That's how you measure a rim, where the beads are. Pretty common size for a rear.
Yeah. It's in good shape.
Yeah, I've spent a lot of time on this one, just getting things right, getting things looking new again. A lot of the stuff I'll receive. Sometimes the customer, they'll do it themselves. They're into that and they enjoy it. Or they'll do it while they're already going ahead and having other parts done, and send me things ready. And then other times I'll go ahead and restore everything for them. That was the case here. We wanted to make sure that sometimes there might be parts inside this hub that don't necessarily need to be replaced. We can reuse those and keep some of that original.
Now, if folks want to find you, your website.
I'm on Instagram, Old Nipple Twister, and I just started a little Facebook deal, but Instagram is primarily on there. My phone number's on there.
All right.
I'm out of Azusa, California, not too far from here. Had about an hour drive tonight. They can mail things to me, or they can stop by. I'm pretty much available.
So if they want prices, because there's a lot of different components to this. They really just need to call, say this is what I got.
That's it. Just tell me what you've got, where you want to go. I'll source parts out from time to time. Somebody's looking for something unique. I've got a lot of contacts on people who might have certain things, and makes it easier on them to find things. If it takes me too much work, there's no money in that.
Yeah.
So spending hours hunting stuff down. But yeah, anytime somebody wants a price on it or a general idea of what they're looking for, they can contact me, give me a call, shoot me an email. All right, so we've got things pretty snug here. Something I like to do, you don't see many people doing this unless they do it on a regular basis and know of this. I'll use a lightweight oil. That oil we used that lube we were using earlier, it's kind of a drawing oil. It's made to just feed itself into those threads, and it's going to stay there for years to come. This is a little lightweight oil. This is a 3-in-1 oil you put on your baseball mitt or whatever you might have, and I'll put a drop on the head of each of these nipples. Never use enough lube on nipples. And again, what this is going to help do is give a more true feel or true torque value when I start tightening these nipples up. As I'm turning it, another thing that'll help, this is a steel rim, and if you had an aluminum rim, a lot of times those nipple heads want to dig down into the aluminum, and it kind of prevents that. It helps me work up to a stronger torque value than what I might get if things started binding up in there.
So those are they're just snug then with your fingers. And
That's
then
it.
the oil. All right.
That's it. So they're snug there, and there you go. That's the built wheel there, fully assembled. Again, I mentioned I like doing this on a horizontal stand, and it kind of holds things in place and gives a more even distribution of the spokes. You can kind of get that idea once you see it mounted in here. It's letting that rim, gravity, hold that rim right where I want it. I've got the correct axle that would be used on this particular hub on there. So I get a better feel for what it's actually going to do once it's mounted up on that bike. And this is where it gets kind of organic. You know, every hub's going to be different the way you mount it. I do a lot of star hubs, so I've kind of got my system down, how I like to do it. You get things mounted in there, but you might have different hubs. Some hubs are that wide. Some are conical hubs. They have a smaller side to them and a larger side. This particular hub, the drum and the sprocket are all one piece, and they'll actually bolt into this side of that hub. We'll snug it on down. It's a little tight. This is a fresh rebuild on the hub, so things are going to be tight. A lot of times what I'll do is build it up dry one time. If I'm rebuilding a star hub in particular, it's got the roller bearings in there. So I'll measure those and see where they are, and you can buy oversized bearings for any kind of play and any kind of wear that's gone over the years inside that hub. I'll build it up like that dry, maybe with the light oil, just to get things going. And once I've trued this wheel up, I'll take it apart, again, re-grease it, check my end play on the hub itself, how much play there is, and how the axle's going to work. With your star hubs, with these older wheels, there's actually quite a bit of play, and that was to keep the bearings from wearing out so fast. You can see it's got two fittings on here where you can grease it up, you can keep it well maintained. And a lot of the rebuild kits now, they do have a rebuild kit, it's kind of just a generic oversize on those rollers. But what I'm doing now is kind of clamping down on it. I'm pulling those bearings together. There's a set of bearings on this side and a set up here. I'm pulling those together. There's a center spacer, and it's going to hold everything tight where it needs to be. So I've got that hub stationary, and now essentially when you're truing the wheel, you're pulling the rim around. You're pulling it, in this case, up and down, and you're pulling it around. So the side to side, or the way it's mounted, the up and down, that's your lateral run out. So you can measure how far that rim, it looks pretty smooth right now, but once we put a needle on there, we can see there's some little fluctuations in it, and we need to get those out, and then we need to work the torque value up. Then you can put my needle in a different spot and check out that radial run out, where the rim is. And that's where your hop comes in. If you're riding down the road and you're feeling that hop, your radial run out is the problem.
Okay.
If you're riding down the road and you get the speed wobbles, most likely it's the lateral run out.
We have a question from Facebook. What's the proper way to measure a spoke? So if you want to know what the length of your spoke is, do you measure it from the turn, or?
The length of the spoke is measured from the inside of that angle, not including any of the radius of the bend, but from the inside of the angle to the end of the spoke. That's what your spoke, if you're ever ordering custom spoke lengths, or you needed me to match some spokes up for you and old spokes up for you, I can do that, and that's how you'd measure it. So you've got that measurement. Then on that spoke, you've also got the degree of bend. I'll show one of these as an example. A little easier to see with this longer throat on it. So you've got that angle of bend in it, how much bend is needed. These are inner spokes. If you had an outer spoke, it would have probably 95 degrees bend.
Right.
It comes on around, and the idea is it's got to wrap around that flange to get to the rim. And then you've also got the throat length on it. Some people call it a neck length, a throat length there, and that's from just under the head of the spoke back to where the...
So you're going to have three measurements on a spoke. You're going to measure the length, the degree of angle, and then your throat length.
That's it.
So there you go. Whoever asked that question on Facebook, there we go. You got three measurements, and you take those three, and then you can get it.
Maybe two more measurements.
Two more?
But then you've got, this particular spoke is swedged down. It's a little thicker near the hub, and that's going to give it some extra strength where that bend is. It's thicker there, it tapers down inside, so you've got the
diameter,
thickness of it, the diameter of the spoke there, and then what it swedges down to. Sometimes they're swedged so that they don't bind where they cross. Sometimes they're swedged just because you don't need that much material except for at that weak point where it's at. And so a lot of that is determined by the size of the hole in the hub. Then your nipple, the size of the hole in the rim, different nipples. Your motocross guys out there, they've got the really thick nipples. A lot of times that's because they're aluminum, and they need the extra strength. And the size of it, they lose the weight, but they still have to have some size to it. So you'll see a significantly larger body diameter on those nipples for motocross wheels, especially modern motocross wheels. All right, so we'll get set up here now. We can kind of see. I've got a magnetic stand here. What I've got on it is a spoke. This is my sight needle. I can see how that rim's running based on this stationary point of this needle. You can put a dial indicator gauge on here. A lot of times I'll see people using a vertical stand. They'll have the dial indicator gauge on it, but they'll have it set up on the outside of the rim. All of these parts, even a brand new part, if you had it, it's going to have all kinds of variations in it. A rim's not going to be perfectly round when you get it. You're pulling it into its roundness. A lot of times there's ups and downs, or there might be flat spots in rims.
And now you've powder coated this, so that's also going to give you. That's not going to necessarily be a perfect.
That's it. Rims have weld lines on them. A lot of the old wheels that I'll do will have holes where there once were rim clamps, and they'll use those to hold the tire in place for racing purposes. And a lot of times I'll see pretty bad spots in the rim where those places are, and it's because there's a bolt sticking through the rim there.
Yeah.
They've already punched a hole in the rim, now there's a bolt, and it's hit every time they're hitting something or jumping something. So those rim locks will make a difference on it. So there's a lot of variations to it. Nothing's perfect. Some rims are better than others, just the way they're made. This rim, as it sits right now, I can hear it. There's one little spot here that's kind of high. You can hear it drag right around here. But other than that, it's actually running pretty true just as it is, just from me taking the time to really do things evenly as it went. Let's see. All right, now I've got some spoke wrenches here. These particular wrenches are made with the exact size of the flats of the nipple. So if you just went in your toolbox and grabbed a wrench out, if it didn't match up, if it was a little too large, you might start rounding off the corners on those nipples. So it's good to have the correct tools used. We can hear it. We're just kind of give you an idea of the touring process. Because I know that rim's hitting right here, it's a little high right there. So I'm going to bring it on down a little bit. And now we don't hear that spot anymore.
Oh, wow. Just that little turn right there.
Just a little tweak on it. A lot of people want to know what the sequence is. Where should they start? I'll typically use the valve stem hole just as a guide, and I've been doing that for a long time. Now I'm starting to realize maybe this is just the philosophy side of things, but
yeah,
I'll use that. And a lot of times there's a kind of a variation there, so I don't necessarily want to start there, but it helps you kind of keep track of where you are in the wheel. And a lot of people want to know, do you start with the radial or the lateral run out? And I like just to get things up to torque right. And then I'll kind of do the lateral more than the radial. So I'll get things even, and then I'll start working with it and then pull it back into where it needs to be. I'm just kind of turning things evenly here, just an even distribution all around. This is the monotonous part of wheel building. I was wondering how I do up here, not sitting down and with a cold beverage of my choice beside me, but
well, that's like Chris Richardson narrowing the tank earlier. He said he usually does that while he smokes a pack of cigarettes. But
my girl, she'll hang in there with me for a while. A lot of times ends up being the shop cat that comes and watches me work as I'm going late nights. Been pretty amazing the amount of wheels people need done, and I'm staying busy. I'm working 14 hours a day right now, just getting projects done.
Wow. That's good, though. It's good to be busy.
It's good to be busy. Can't complain too much. Everything's seasonal, so it typically comes in waves, and whether it's race season or show season.
Right.
Always some last-minute jobs, but I really enjoy it. Motorcycles have always been my passion. And first bike was a Can-Am dirt bike.
Oh, right on.
I'm probably more of a Harley guy right now, but I'll ride anything. Enjoy all of them.
You know, in eastern North Carolina there, my parents wouldn't let me ride motorcycles, mini bikes, dirt bikes and stuff. We rode horses instead. And then I finally was wearing them down, so my dad said I could ride if I could build one, so I ended up building one. So I never got to ride dirt bikes or anything, but when I was 16, I ended up built an old panhead out of scrap pieces and stuff and rode it out to Sturgis without them knowing about it. Boy, they were mad when they found out.
The first bike I ever bought new, I went into an old man. I said, come check out my bike. He wouldn't come out of the house. He ended up buying that motorcycle from me a few years later. So now he's a rider. That was worth it to me. Now what I'm trying to figure out is what place around here you're going to take me to after the show here to get some barbecue.
Barbecue. Boy, I tell you. You know, you're not going to believe this, but over at the house where we're staying, we got an Airbnb. Last night, we got back about midnight, and I put in a 12-pound pork leg and made up some vinegar-based North Carolina barbecue sauce and coleslaw. So you're welcome to come to the house and eat some North Carolina barbecue with me.
It's not vinegar-based, it's not barbecue. Right?
That's right. So I've actually made some barbecue for these guys. That's funny. Yeah, man, you're welcome to come over too, man. I couldn't smoke it, but I had to do it in the oven, but I did it up.
So what I'm looking at here is the relationship now. We got the up and down out pretty much. There might be a little high or low spot on it, but now I'm seeing how close it is to where that bead is running. As I mentioned before, I like truing based on where the tire's actually going to run. That's going to give you the truest measurement of where you are and how the tire's going to run. And you can see how close it's getting right there. That means that spot, that rim's too far over this way. I want to bring it back here, so I'll start tightening down on this area. A lot of people go groups of 4. You kind of see on this wheel, that's how the spokes lay out. There's 4 there, 4 there, 4 there. That's one way to do it. I'll kind of average things out. I might go a little bit wider than that just to really pull it in nice and smooth. Any of these bad spots, if I run into a spot where there's the weld line is, every time you look at it, there's going to be a hot there, and there's nothing you can do about it. That's how the rim is made.
There's some things you just don't chase.
That's right. You can put a dial indicator on here, and you can measure it all day long. You're still going to be ignoring some bad spot in that in that rim. So what I'll do is kind of average it out just around that bad spot, and make it as smooth as I can without being too significant of a run out there. We got things looking pretty good. I don't have it up here on the stage, but a lot of times I'll set my light right here, and I can see the background of that light, really get a better. There's a little high spot. I heard him. You can hear a little scratch there. Yeah. See it when it bumps. So we'll pull it on down there. That's something to mention. You'll see people banging on spokes like this as they're truing. You don't typically see that in a professional shop, but if you've done enough of them, you can listen for that tone. What it's really good for is just a quick check. If you've got your bike out there and you're worried, I don't know what's wrong with my wheel, I feel a little vibration, you want to check out that wheel, take your wrench around, ping, and see if you hear a low spot, you've got a loose spoke there. See if any are different. But that's about all it's good for. Unless you're really using that every time you're doing one and just kind of learn yourself. And that's where you see it's kind of an organic process. It's not everything's not set on it. So once I've got it pretty even, I've gotten rid of most of that lateral run out, most of the radial run out, that's when I'll start working my torque values up. And I'll go kind of keep things the same. You can work on one side, it makes it a little faster. You can do each at a time. Some wheels, the spokes are so close, it's just hard to get in there, and you want to just work on one side at a time. But
yeah, I see some of these wheels that, 100-spoke wheels, those things got to just be nightmares.
It adds a little bit more time. It's more of a gradual movement that you've got. One good thing is a lot of those are newer wheels. And I've seen some of the fat spokes on wheels. I like the traditional look better myself, but that is a really popular thing. And the only problem I see with those is a little bit harder sometimes to get in there and fix something where there's already a problem. Just the way they're put together, kind of hit or miss on them. But A lot of those have those high count spokes on it, and they seem to be built really strong that way. Years ago, there was a company making some hubs, and they just kept increasing the spoke count, but never the meat on the hub. So you started seeing that the hole getting closer and closer to the edge of the flange. They had a problem with it. They had some blowouts. But even an old steel hub like this can give you problems that you're not really aware about. If I kept tightening this up too much, what I'll end up doing is pulling that flange into it. Kind of sucks itself into the hub, and you'll have one just about true, and you'll all of a sudden, well, what's going on here? I had it true just a second ago. That's what it is. This hub itself just
you actually can warp the
So you got to know when to stop. And another problem with the rim, these old rims, you don't want to. You can pull a nipple right through a rim if you keep working on it too much. But this wheel here, I'm looking at probably 55 or 65 inch-pounds of torque that I want to put on, and that's probably on the high. And you could get away with 40 to 50 inch-pounds. But I like to work it on, especially if I got the new components. The old part of the old nipple twister comes from all the old pieces I work on. A lot of these rusty nipples take a little bit more care and time to work with. They can be a little bit more of a headache, but some guys like the original patina on it. And
I've got a 48 Indian in my shop right now, and the guy wants it. The thing wasn't even painted. It's a chopper. Never even got painted. It was built in the late 60s. And the frame is brazed together. And I don't even know the frame screws. I got to disassemble it, and try to get the frame straightened out and whatnot. But he wants to leave those wire wheels that are on it, and the rear one's got a broken spoke. But he likes that patina on those wheels. He just wants to leave it that way. So I talked to guy bought the bike from Kiwi Mike, and Kiwi's going to send me a wheel. I'm just going to send that one back so that he's got one in a pile someplace. But I have a feeling that thing's going to, those wheels are going to need to be trued. You might be getting a shipment.
All right, I'd be glad to. Yeah, we'll try and keep things original if somebody wants that as long as we can. Sometimes it's reached its end of its rope and you wouldn't feel comfortable putting it, but all these old parts they'll hang in there. You get a lot more life out of them once you've made that adjustment. What happens a lot of times, somebody will hit a bump or have some kind of problem that just barely loosens things up, and they can't feel it for some time. What's happening, that metal starts to work hard. That little bit of movement, that slight movement, every time they're riding is creating a weaker spot.
Well, that's like we take metal all the time and just break it, and we just work it back and forth, and it'll eventually snap.
That's the idea. That's what's going on there. Or it'll start stretching. Sometimes they'll stretch out once things get loose. So.
Yeah. Well, I know wheels didn't keep up for a while there with horsepower.
That's right. I'll get a lot of broken wheels, especially the rear wheels or somebody getting down on that throttle. And now sometimes what I can do is put a heavier duty spoke in there. A lot of times these hub holes are made where you could get a slightly thicker spoke, and just adding 20 thousandths of an inch diameter on there is going to really increase the strength of the wheel.
Yeah, man, because for a time there, I know we had guys, man, they'd want to build these massive motors, and they were running their stock wire wheels on them, and they're just coming apart on them.
So we're getting there. We've got the torque worked up pretty good. I'm pretty happy with how high of torque level I've gotten on it. There's a few little spots that I'm working out now. Now it's just the fine tuning. So I'm looking at it. I like the lateral run out. Maybe one little high spot there. And then I'm going to scoot this on in a little bit closer to that bead, just so I can really get a fine tune on the radial run out, how far away that rim is from the hub. We've got one spot. You can hear it.
Yep.
Used to put a set of headphones on and true wheels, and I realized I was missing out on listening for it. So
Yep.
I'll leave one earbud out from time to time. Here's a case where I'm going to work more than just that little group of 4 spokes. I'm going to go ahead and get 2 of them and pull it out.
So when you hear that noise, you're working behind it.
That's right. Once I hear that noise, I know the rim's too close to this needle point. So I want to pull it back in towards the hub. So I'll tighten wherever that little spot is. And I've got it really close. That's within a few hundred thousandths probably. It's still wanting to hit that line, so I'll go ahead and tighten them just a little more. This is an old Kelsey Hayes rim. This is an original component. Really a valuable piece he's got. And they actually run pretty true.
I know in the automotive world, you get some of those old Kelsey Hayes wheels, boy, you really got you something too, man.
That's right. So we're looking pretty good.
Look at that, ain't nothing there. Yeah.
We're pulling off of it right near the weld line, and that's a normal thing. So if you're looking at it by sight, but you start spinning, once you get up to speed, you can see how that kind of averages out. Some of these are a little harder than others. Some of the older rims will have rust spots, or it'll be a bike that it's being restored and it had been sitting somewhere with flat tires. So that one spot in the wheel that
flat,
it's got collected moisture or rusted some, it starts moving the rim around. It starts messing with the metal a little bit. So they can take a little more time, and I'll sit there. I'll work on some of these old ones a lot longer than I probably should, but I like to get things as close as I can. But yeah, that's
pretty amazing, buddy.
Get one little spot here. We'll pull it in, get it right like I want it. And that's pretty much it. You can see how much torque's on that right now. That's a pretty nice snug wheel. Give it the old.
Get a tap and playing a little music on it. Get it. Make sure. Well, man, that's just amazing. So that's it. You've assembled and true to wire wheel right there for sure.
That's it. It's hard to beat the wheel with laces on it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a classic look, man. I mean, that's. Yeah, you can aesthetically go wrong with some mag wheels, but it's hard to do that with a wire wheel. I mean, that's just classic. So, ladies and gentlemen, Matt Carroll, Old Nipple Twisters.
Thank you.
Man, I tell you, man, thanks for so much for being with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You guys hit them up on Instagram, Old Nipple Twister. And you are definitely going to be getting 2 Indian wheels from me so that you can true them up so I don't have to. So
I look forward to it.
That's amazing, man. Thanks for being with us. Appreciate you coming out today.
Yeah, thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen,